We are going to learn how to subtract numbers with varied digits. We're going to subtract them without borrowing and also subtract them with borrowing. When we want to subtract numbers, we first arrange them vertically, and we're going to fill blank columns with 0. But when we arrange vertically, we're going to pay attention to the place value of the numbers, and we're going to follow the rules for subtraction, which is starting from the rightmost column all the way to the left. So let's start with these examples. So we have 98, so we write 98, and we have 5, it's in the ones place, so we put the 5 right here, and we can put a 0 here, and then we subtract. So we start from the rightmost column. 8 minus 5, that's going to give us 3. And then we move over to the next column on the left. 9 minus 0, that is going to give us 9. Next question. 837 minus 24. So 837, and then 24, 4 is in the ones place, 2 is in the tens place, and then there's no number in the hundreds place, so we replace that with a 0, and then we subtract. So we're starting from the rightmost column. 7 minus 4, that gives you 3. Then we move over to the next column on the left. 3 minus 2, that will give you 1, and then we move to the next column. 8 minus 0, that will give you 8. Next example, we have 4,862. 4,862 minus 40, so 0 is in the ones place, 4 is in the tens place, and then we replace every other place value with zeros. And then we start from the right hand side. 2 minus 0, that gives us 2. We move over to the next column. 6 minus 4, that should give us 2. Then we move over to the next column. 8 minus 0, that should give us 8. And then next column, 4 minus 0, that will give us 4. Next example, we have 6,874. 6,874 minus 143. So 3 is in the ones place, 4 is in the tens place, 1 is in the hundreds place, and there's no number in the thousands place, so we replace with a 0. So we start with the right hand side. So we start from this column. 4 minus 3, that's going to give us 1. We switch over to the next column. 7 minus 4, that will give us 3. Then next column. 8 minus 1, that will give us 7. And then final column here. 6 minus 0, that will give us 6. Now we go over to the numbers that require, subtracting numbers that require borrowing. The steps are going to be exactly the same as what we've done. The only difference is that we're now going to focus on the steps for borrowing. So let's look at some examples and show how this works. So first we're going to arrange numbers vertically. So we have 46 minus 9. So we have 46, and then 9 is in the ones place, minus 9. So we will start from the right hand side. So we have 6 minus 9. We cannot subtract 9 directly from 6. So we'll go to our neighbor on the left hand side and ask him to borrow 1. So We take 1 from the neighbor and he's left with 3. And the one that we borrow from our neighbor, we bring it over here and it becomes 16. So we add 1, we had 10 to 6, so that becomes 16. So now we have 16 minus 9, and that will give us 7. Now we go over to the left hand side. Instead of 4, we now have 3. 3 minus 0, we have 3. Next question, we have 472 minus 58. So 8 is in the ones place, 5 is in the tens place, and there's no 100 digits, so we replace that with 0. So now we start from the right hand side. 2 minus 8. So we're trying to get 2 items from, we're trying to remove 8 items from 2. That's not possible to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the left hand side and borrow 1 from the left hand side. That leaves these with 6. And the one that we borrow is going to make it 12 over here. So 12 minus 8 is going to give you 4. Then we move over to the left hand side. 6 minus 5, that will give you 1. And then we move over to the left hand side again. 4 minus 0, that will give you 4. Final examples, we have 6,000 minus 823. So 3 is in the ones place, 2 is in the tens place, and 8 is in the hundreds place, and we replace the thousands place since it's blank with a 0. And now we can subtract. We're going to start from the right hand side. So we have 0 and we want to give away 3, or we want to subtract 3 from that. So we go to the left hand side. Our neighbor on the left has nothing. We go over to that next neighbor again, has nothing, and so we go over to the neighbor with 6, and we take 1 from that neighbor, and the neighbor is left with 5. Now the one that we got from that neighbor actually gets added to the neighbor next to him on the right, which is this one right here. And so now that this neighbor has 10, this neighbor right here can borrow 1. So that neighbor can now borrow 1. So this becomes 9. And then the one that is borrowed becomes 10 on this side. Now we see that the column we're interested in can now borrow from 10, and we strike this out, and it has 9 left over. And the one that he borrowed from that neighbor can now become 10 on this side. So now we have 10 minus 3, that's going to give us 7. Then we switch over to the next neighbor on the left. 9 minus 2, see how that changes? 9 minus 2, that will give us 7. Then we move over to the left hand side. 9 minus 8, that will give us 1. And then we move over to the final column on the left. 5 minus 0, that will give us 5. Now the last example we have 5,423 minus 784. So we have 4 in the ones place, we have 8 in the tens place, and we have 7 in the hundreds place. There is no number in the thousands place for this number, so we replace that with a 0. We're going to start from the right hand side here. So 3 minus 4, that's not possible to do because we can't take 4 things from 3. So we go over to the next door neighbor here, which is 2. We borrow 1 from the neighbor. It's left with 1. And the one that we borrow is going to be added to, is going to become 10, and we add that to 3, and that's going to give us 13. So 13 minus 4, that should give us 9. Now we go over to the next column on the left. Now we have 1 minus 8. We can't really do that. It's not possible to do. So now we go over to this neighbor with 4 and borrow 1. So this neighbor is left with 3. Now what happens with that is now we have 11 instead of 1. So 11 minus 8, we're going to have 3. Now we go over to the next column on the left. Now we have 3 minus 7. We can't really do that, so we need to go borrow 1 from our next neighbor on the left hand side. And so 5, he has 5, so it gives away 1, so it's left with 4. And the one that is given away becomes 10. We add it to 3, we have 13. 13 minus 7, that's going to give us 6. Now we move over to the left hand side again. We have 4 minus 0, and that will give us 4.